So yesterday you guys wrote a summary of the wagon train at dusk. Today what you're going to do is look at the summary that you wrote and you're going to revise and edit. So what does revising mean? We're going to talk about that today. And I have a question. Why should we revise our work? If you look right here, what's the point? Why should I go back, look at the text that I wrote, and revise it? So if you think that revision is a process that you do only after writing, you are mistaken. I revise all the time. I revise the lessons that I'm creating for you all the time. I think about it in the car as I'm driving home from work. I think about it at night before I go to bed. I'm constantly thinking about how I can change my lesson to be better so that you guys can understand. So we do revision all the time, not just with our writing. But when we are writing, we want to revise our paper several times. When we do that, it helps us improve our writing skills. It also helps our audience better understand what we are trying to say. So if we fix our writing and we go back into it and edit and revise, it's going to help our audience understand what we're trying to say in a better way. Okay, so how do we revise? What steps do we use? So you can follow the arms and cups to revise your summary. So let's look at what arms is. We revise with arms and we edit with cups. So arms is an acronym for adding sentences, A for adding sentences and words. So if you need to add more words to your summary, you can do that. You can also remove words and sentences that you don't need. So things that you wrote in your summary, and as you're rereading it, you're like, okay, I don't need that. I don't need all that information. It's too much. You can take those out. You can move sentences or words to another part of the paragraph. So maybe you wrote something at the bottom of your summary and you want it to be at the top. You can move your sentences around so that it sounds better to you. You can also substitute words for better ones by using a thesaurus or a dictionary. I only suggest doing this if you understand what the word means. Don't look up a word in the dictionary that you don't understand and substitute that in. Only use words that you know. All right, so this is our revise. Well, we also have to edit. So after we kind of look at what our words say and the placement of our words, we need to go back in and edit. So we're going to edit with cups. The C is for capitalization. Do all of your sentences start with a capital letter? Do any names like Lucy start with a capital letter? Or any proper nouns? Okay. Title. So the title of the book is Wagon Train at Dusk. Did you capitalize the W in wagon, the T in train? Make sure that your titles have capital letters. The letter I. I see a lot of people put I and they put this. They type I and they leave it like that. I needs to be capitalized. Okay, make sure you capitalize the I. If you are including days of the week, that needs to be capitalized. And holidays need to be capitalized. U is for usage. So make sure your words make sense. So there, and there. Okay? Think about what your word, how you're using your words, and do they make sense? Remember, there, they are. There is talking about that person. And there is like a place. There is my cat. Okay? Over there. Punctuation, P. Every single sentence needs to have punctuation. I can't tell you how many times I read something that when there's no punctuation and I can barely hold my breath long enough to get through it. If you do not put punctuation, you have one long run-on sentence. So after every sentence, you either need to have a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. Make sure you use commas correctly, okay? And your quotation marks. If you're taking any words from the text, if you're going to use the author's words, you have to put them in quotation marks because you're using someone else's words. They're not your own. And then the S, spelling. Make sure you check your words for correct spelling by using a dictionary or thesaurus. So, I don't want to see anyone spelling wagon wrong or train wrong. Some of these words are from the text, so you need to make sure your spelling is correct. And when you're typing in a Word document, if I write, let's get rid of the M, summary. Do you see this little red squiggly line? That means my spelling is incorrect. So you guys have an advantage because you're doing this all online. You can see where your spelling is incorrect, and if you actually right-click that word, it tells you, did you mean summary with 2 M's? Yes, I did. So I'm going to click on that. Always double check your spelling. All right, so let's look at a few examples that were written yesterday. Just put this one down here. All right, so I'm going to read it first. This story is about Dad telling his daughter about a time when he had a challenge in childhood. He tells his daughter the story all the time when he was in 6th grade. When Dad was little, he had to make a shoebox diorama of a scene from American history. In the middle of the night, he heard a ripping sound that woke him up. His dog Lucy demolished his masterpiece. The next day, he tells his class the dog ate his diorama. He also says, quote, I picked up all the pieces and put them in the box and took the whole thing to school. I called it Wagon Train After Tornado. After all, there was nothing to worry about because his classmates and teacher loved it. Okay, so there's a little bit that needs to be revised and edited. So I see that this person starts by writing, this story is about Dad telling his daughter about a time when he had a challenge in childhood. What story? You need to make sure you include the title, okay? So I'm going to write the story, Wagon Train at Dusk, and I'm putting it in quotation marks, is about Dad. Is it about Dad or is it about a dad? It's about a dad. It's not my dad. It's a dad. Or you could put father. The story Wagon Train at Dusk is about a dad telling his daughter about a time when he had a challenge in childhood. Perfect. He tells his daughter the story all the time when he was in 6th grade. Okay, so now I have a question about this sentence. He tells his daughter this story all the time when he was in 6th grade. Was he telling the story to his daughter when he was in 6th grade? I don't think so. I think he's telling the story about a time that he had in 6th grade. So we need to change the way the sentence looks. We could say he tells his daughter a story that happened He tells his daughter a story that happened when he was in 6th grade. Perfect. When Dad was little, he had to make a shoebox diorama of a scene from American history. So we could say, when the dad was little, he had to make a shoebox diorama of a scene from American history. So I'm wondering, do we need to know the word shoebox, or can we just know the word diorama? I think we can delete the word shoebox. Because we know that a diorama is like a project. So when the dad was little, he had to make a diorama of a scene from American history. We don't really need to know that it was from that history class, but we could say when the dad was little, he had to make a diorama for school or for class. We also want to mention about how he had that rival of Jorge. So we could say something like he decided he would make a masterpiece to show up Jorge, to show up his classmate. So show up his classmate. In the middle of the night, he heard a ripping sound that woke him up. Okay, so now we're jumping too quickly from classmate to in the middle of the night. So we could say, but while he was asleep, a sound woke him up. Okay, so this is excellent. This person's using really good descriptive words, but we don't necessarily need them in a summary. But while he was asleep, a sound woke him up. His dog, Lucy, and we want to put a comma, his dog, comma, Lucy, comma, demolished his masterpiece. The next day, he tells his class the dog ate the diorama. So we also want to mention that he was upset, right? We could just simply put he was sad. However, what happened? He realizes that if he says the dog ate my diorama, he realizes that that's funny. So we can say, however, he realizes that the dog eating the diorama is funny. So he decides to present his project anyway. So he presents his project anyway. The next day, he tells his class the dog ate his diorama. He also says, I picked up all the pieces and put them in the box and took the whole thing to school. Okay, so we could say that he presents his project anyway and says, so we can delete everything from here to here. Because we want to tell our audience that he's saying, I picked up the pieces and put them in the box and took the whole thing to school. Oh, okay. He did not. All right. So he doesn't actually say this to the people. He's just telling us, the reader, because that doesn't make sense. Okay. So however he realizes, he presents his project anyway. Period. We can delete this because we don't need it. And we can say he, right? Because it's the father that's talking. He called it wagon train after a tornado. He realized that after all, there was nothing to worry about because his classmates and teachers loved it. So we could say he realized that there's nothing, how did they say it in the text? He realized after all, there's nothing to worry about because his classmates and teacher loved it. Actually, we could just leave that. He realized there was nothing to worry about because his classmates and teachers loved it. Okay, so now let's reread again to make sure that our revising makes sense. The story Wagon Train at Dusk is about a dad, and I need a comma here, is about a dad telling his daughter about a time when he had a challenge in childhood. He tells his daughter a story that happened when he was in 6th grade. When the dad was little, he had to make a diorama for his class. He decided he would make a masterpiece to show up his classmate, but while he was asleep, a sound woke him up. His dog, Lucy, demolished his masterpiece. He was sad. However, he realized that the dog eating the diorama is funny. So he presented his project anyway. He called it Wagon Train After Tornado. He realized there was nothing to worry about because his classmates and teacher loved it. Excellent. So now we need to just double check, go back and make sure that we have correct capitalization, punctuation, and usage of words, as you see up here. Capitalization, usage, and punctuation, and spelling. So the story Wagon Train at Dusk. Wagon Train at Dusk is capitalized. I see that I have a period, I have a comma, I have a period at the end of the sentence. He tells his daughter a story about what happened when he was 6th grade, period, capital W, okay. And I see all my spelling. I don't see any red squiggly lines on here, so it looks like my spelling is good. And I can see that I used a comma after asleep. All right, so I double checked this and I see that I have all of my spelling, and even down here, Wagon Train After Tornado, because that's the title of his work, everything is capitalized. All right, so what you guys are going to do is you're going to take the summary that you wrote, okay? So I edited this one, I revised and edited. You're going to take the summary that you wrote and you're going to revise and edit. So you're going to make sure that you use the arms for revision and the cups for editing. All right, and I will post this in a Google document so that you can just pull this up. All right, and if you want to see, actually, I'll post this entire document so that way you can go back and you can look at the example of how I revised. Okay? All right, so please make sure that you get this done today.